From the Media District adjacent, it's time to take another deep plunge into the issues and topics that face Burbank. Let's see what we have on the plate to dissect today.
Hello, everybody. Craig Sherwood here with you once again, and we have something very unique for you today. On Monday, October 14th, the Planning Commission is going to take a look at the Media District Specific Plan and get a report from staff. These documents are full of information, so I sent them over to both John and Jenny and said, go through these, take a look at them, and why don't you talk about them and give our listeners a background on what this plan is and what it means. So, take it away, John and Jenny.
Hey there. Ready to dive into this Burbank Media District plan? You sent over a whole stack of documents on the Media District specific plan, a real estate market study, even some FAQs. Seems like you're on a mission to get this figured out.
Yeah, it's a lot to unpack, but these documents give us a great place to start our deep dive.
Okay, so what are we hoping to learn? What are the key things you want to get out of these documents?
You want to know where the Media District is headed, right? And how those changes might affect you.
Exactly. I really want to go beyond just the headlines and figure out what this plan means for the people who actually live and work in Burbank.
You've come to the right place. One of those interesting things about this plan is that it's way more than just about the studios. It's about making the whole area into like a vibrant mixed-use community.
Okay, so it's not just about sound stages and movie sets anymore?
No, not at all. Think like bustling sidewalks, cozy cafes, maybe even a weekend farmer's market. We're talking about a place where people can live, work, and play, all right there next to those iconic studios.
That's a big change. But I bet some longtime residents might be a little unsure about too much change, especially in a place known for its neighborhood feel.
For sure, and the plan actually addresses that directly. One of its main goals is to balance new development with keeping the character of those surrounding residential areas.
So how do they plan to do that? It sounds like a tough balancing act.
It really is all in the details. Like, they're proposing graduated height limits. So taller buildings are more toward the center of the district, further away from those residential areas.
So keeping those taller buildings closer to the action and away from those charming tree-lined streets.
Exactly. And closer to those neighborhoods, the plan calls for step backs for taller buildings.
Step backs. I'm picturing something like architectural terraces.
Got it. Imagine a building that kind of like gracefully tapers as it goes higher, minimizing that visual impact on those lower residential streets. It's subtle, but it's a really effective way to blend different building types without overwhelming those established neighborhoods.
That's a clever design solution. Sounds like they're really listening to the community's concerns. But a more vibrant district usually means more people. And more people usually means more traffic. What are they doing about that?
Get ready to kiss those traffic woes goodbye, because this plan is all about a transit-oriented future.
Okay, now I'm really intrigued. What does that even look like? Are we talking flying cars here?
Not quite flying cars, but they are proposing a brand new bus rapid transit line, a BRT.
Wait, a whole new transit line just for the Media District?
Well, not just for the Media District, but it'll run right through it, connecting North Hollywood all the way to Pasadena.
Yeah.
So imagine hopping on a modern, efficient bus and just zipping right past all that traffic.
Wow, that's impressive. That'd be a game changer for commuters or anyone trying to get around the area without a car.
Exactly. And it doesn't stop there. They're also planning better bicycle infrastructure, like dedicated bike lanes and better signage, and even looking at a potential local transit circulator, something like a shuttle, to connect people within the district.
Okay, so they're really pulling out all the stops to make it easier to get around without a car. This sounds like it could totally change how people experience the entire Media District.
Totally. But it's not just about getting people to the Media District. It's also about giving them a reason to stay. And that's where the plan's focus on housing comes in.
Because a vibrant district needs residents to really come alive.
Exactly. The plan recognizes that Burbank needs more housing. And they're not just talking about just adding units. They want to encourage a diverse mix of housing types and densities, especially near transit. So picture this. Apartments, condos, maybe even townhouses, all within walking distance of work, shops, restaurants, and that new BRT line we talked about.
So you could live, work, and play in the Media District without ever needing to use your car. That's amazing. But how do they plan to do that in an area that's already pretty developed?
Well, they're looking at some interesting tools like transfer of development rights -TDR.
TDR, okay. You're going to have to break that one down for me.
It's simpler than it sounds. TDR lets property owners move their unused development rights from one spot to another.
So they could move potential development away from more sensitive areas, like those residential edges we talked about, towards those designated growth areas around the BRT.
Exactly. It encourages density and growth in areas that can handle it while preserving those more established neighborhoods.
That's a win-win. But with all this new development and a bustling district, I'm curious about the environmental impact. California is no stranger to droughts, so I have to ask, how is this plan addressing water usage?
You're right. Water is a big deal in California. This plan directly addresses water conservation.
Okay, good to hear. What's their approach?
It's a multi-pronged strategy, big focus on using recycled water as much as possible.
So using recycled water for things like landscaping and industrial purposes.
Exactly. And the plan also emphasizes water-efficient designs in new buildings. Think low-flow fixtures, drought-tolerant landscaping, even rainwater harvesting systems.
So building water conservation right into the DNA of the district, that's impressive.
It's a really forward-thinking approach. The plan goes beyond just saving water, too. It also gets into the nitty-gritty of building sustainable infrastructure to support all this growth.
So making sure that the infrastructure can keep up with those big goals.
Exactly. Upgrading water and sewer systems, investing in renewable energy sources, that kind of thing.
It sounds like they're really thinking about the long-term sustainability of the media district, not just the immediate future.
Absolutely. They get that a truly successful plan needs a balance of economic growth, environmental responsibility, and community well-being.
Okay, so they're tackling traffic, housing, water, and sustainability. What's next?
Well, you can't have a plan without considering the people who will be most affected by it. That's why community engagement is a core theme throughout this whole plan.
A plan is only as good as the community's willingness to embrace it, right?
You said it. And it's obvious that the city of Burbank knows this. They've really gone above and beyond to make sure residents have a say in the future of their media district.
Okay, so tell us, how have residents been involved in this process so far?
They've really rolled out the red carpet for community feedback. We're talking workshops, surveys, online platforms, the whole 9 yards. They really wanted to make sure everyone could share their thoughts.
That's great. And it sounds like they've been committed to keeping those lines of communication open throughout the entire planning process.
Totally. They've held multiple community workshops, each one focused on specific topics, and then refined those details based on the feedback they got. It's been a real collaboration between the city and its people.
That's really impressive. What were some of the hot button issues that got people talking?
No surprise here, but traffic and parking were big ones. Those are always hot topics in areas that are growing, especially in a car-dependent city like LA.
Totally. Everyone's got an opinion when it comes to traffic and parking, so how did the city address those concerns?
This is where it gets really interesting. The community's input directly shaped those solutions we talked about earlier, like that BRT line and those strategies for managing parking better.
So the residents had a real impact on the plan's direction.
Absolutely. Their feedback wasn't just heard, it actually made its way into the plan itself. But traffic and parking weren't the only things on people's minds. Residents were also really vocal about keeping the unique character of their neighborhoods. They wanted to make sure that new development didn't erase that special charm of the area.
And understandably so. People have a strong connection to their communities and want to ensure new development improves those communities, not takes away from them. How did the plan address those concerns?
They made it a priority. Remember those graduated height limits and step backs we talked about? Those came directly from community feedback. Same with the guidelines for building design and that focus on pedestrian-friendly streetscapes. It's all about finding that sweet spot between progress and preservation.
It sounds like they found that balance, but diving into a document like this specific plan can feel a bit like going down a rabbit hole.
Oh yeah, I hear you. It's easy to get lost in the details. But those details matter. They tell us a lot about the city's vision for the future.
Exactly. So let's pull back the curtain a bit and reveal some of those fascinating, maybe even unexpected nuggets we found buried within this treasure trove of information.
Oh, there are plenty of those.
Yeah.
For example, did you know the plan actually gets into specific definitions for media-related uses, like ghost kitchens and media support facility?
Ghost kitchens. Okay, that sounds intriguing and maybe a little spooky. Tell me more.
Okay, picture this. A kitchen that's only for making food for delivery. No dine-in customers, just meals being prepped and sent out with delivery drivers.
So it's like a behind-the-scenes culinary operation feeding our love of takeout. That's so interesting.
Exactly. And these ghost kitchens are often run by those online food platforms, which shows how technology is changing even the way we eat.
Wow, it's like the future of food happening right under our noses. What about those media support facilities? What are those all about?
Think of them as like the unsung heroes of the entertainment industry. They handle all of those behind-the-scenes tasks that keep things running smoothly.
So they're like the glue that holds it all together.
Exactly. At administrative offices, post-production facilities, even storage for equipment and sets.
Wow, so it's a whole ecosystem of support that most people never even see. That's incredible.
It is. And the plan recognizes how important these facilities are to the media district, so it makes sure they have a place to thrive alongside the studios. But it's not just about what happens inside the buildings. The plan also looks closely at those spaces in between.
Okay, so let's talk about the public spaces. What are they doing to make the media district a more enjoyable and engaging place to be?
Get ready to be amazed by how detailed the design guidelines in this plan get. This goes way beyond basic zoning. We're talking specific requirements for what building facades look like, what materials they use, even where windows and doors are placed.
So they're really focused on getting that look and feel just right.
Absolutely. They want new development to make the district look even better and create a streetscape that's both functional and beautiful.
It's not just about what you can build, but how you build it.
Exactly. Like they have this idea of frontage types. Think of them as like different personalities for those ground level spaces that face the street.
Okay, so you might have a bustling frontage with shops and restaurants, or a tranquil frontage with residential buildings and landscaping, that kind of thing.
Exactly. They have a whole system for categorizing these frontages, and each type has its own guidelines. Things like building setbacks, how much glass is required to create a more open feel, even the maximum length of blank walls.
Blank walls, those are the worst for a vibrant streetscape. They can make a place feel unwelcoming and even unsafe.
I know, right? And they've clearly thought a lot about how to prevent those lifeless stretches of concrete.
Okay, I'm impressed. They really are thinking of everything.
And we haven't even gotten to the open space yet. Creating welcoming open spaces for residents and visitors is a huge priority.
Like a breath of fresh air in the middle of the city. I like it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But here's the really interesting part. The plan actually has requirements for publicly accessible open space based on the size of the lot. So bigger development, more they have to contribute to public spaces.
That's a smart way to make sure that new growth benefits everyone. So are we talking about pocket parks, plazas, maybe even rooftop gardens?
All of the above. These open spaces aren't just about looks either. The plan encourages designers to think about how those spaces can be used, like outdoor dining, community events, or even just a quiet spot to chill out.
I can already picture myself enjoying a coffee and a good book in one of these new parks. It sounds like they're making the media district a much more pedestrian-friendly and inviting place to hang out.
They are. And speaking of things that can be a pain in urban areas, let's talk parking.
Okay, because parking can make or break an area. Nobody wants to spend hours circling for a spot. How are they tackling this challenge?
They're using a bunch of different solutions. Rather than just saying you need X number of parking spots, which could be a recipe for a lot of asphalt, they're trying a more flexible approach.
Tell me more about this flexible approach.
For starters, they like the idea of shared parking agreements. This means letting different businesses share parking lots or structures, which maximizes those spaces, especially if their busy times are different.
That's smart. What else?
They're also looking into separating the cost of parking from housing costs.
Separating. So you wouldn't automatically pay for a parking spot with your rent or mortgage?
Exactly. This gives people more choice, especially those who use public transit, biking, or just prefer to walk.
That could be huge. It could make housing more affordable too, right?
Absolutely. It aligns with that goal of a more multimodal, less car-dependent district, and it could make housing more attainable for a wider range of incomes.
That's a win-win.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And there's more. They're also considering creating a parking benefit district, or PBD.
Okay, another acronym. Explain it to me like I'm 5. What's a PBD and how would it even work?
Basically, a PBD means the district could collect money from parking fees and then use those funds for parking and transportation improvements within the district.
So it's like a self-sustaining system for better parking and transportation options.
You got it. This could mean building new parking structures, making existing ones better, adding more electric vehicle charging stations, even investing in those pedestrian and bicycle improvements we were talking about earlier.
So better parking, better transportation, and a more lively, pedestrian-friendly district, all funded by those who use those parking facilities the most. Seems like a pretty good deal to me.
Right. This PBD concept is a perfect example of how the plan thinks about long-term financial sustainability and creating a thriving community.
Because a plan without funding is just a wish list.
Exactly. But it's also about making sure that growth benefits the community, which creates a positive cycle of improvement.
It's really cool to see a plan that's so comprehensive and forward-thinking.
It really is. But what I think is most impressive is how much it's rooted in what the community wants. They've really listened to the residents and included that feedback in the plan.
That's a really important point. And it shows what can be accomplished when a city really works with its resident to create a shared vision for the future. I have a feeling that we've only just scratched the surface of what this plan has in store for the Media District. There are always more layers to uncover, more insights to be gained.
You're absolutely right. We've just barely scratched the surface. We've talked about the big picture and some of those fascinating details, but there's a whole other side to this plan. The economic impact, and how the Media District is changing.
Okay, so we're moving from design guidelines and parking to the dollars and cents that make it all happen. I'm ready.
Awesome. Let's take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll dig into those economic forces and see how this plan is shaping the financial future of Burbank's Media District.
Okay, let's talk about the economic side of things. We've talked about making a more lively and eco-friendly media district, but how does that translate into actual money? What's the plan's financial vision?
That's the question, right? And actually, this real estate market study you sent over gives us some really interesting info. One thing that really stood out to me was how diverse the media district's economy is already. It's easy to just think studios, but there's a lot more going on.
Okay, so it's not all about Hollywood glitz and big budget movies.
Nope. The studios are definitely important, but they're just one part of it. You've also got office buildings, hotels, stores, even some light industrial stuff going on. And remember, those 4,500 residents, they're part of this economy too.
So it's already a pretty diverse economic landscape then.
Exactly. And this plan seems designed to help that existing diversity grow while also encouraging new kinds of businesses to come to the media district. It's about building a stronger and more resilient economy that isn't completely reliant on the entertainment industry.
Which makes a lot of sense, especially these days. No one wants to put all their eggs in one basket.
Exactly. Right. So how are they planning to diversify? Well, the plan encourages a wider variety of uses, especially in those areas that are going to be developed more densely. More office space to attract tech companies, design firms, creative agencies, all those businesses that do well in a creative atmosphere and complement the entertainment world.
So creating a hub for innovation and collaboration that goes beyond the usual film and TV stuff, I like it.
It's a smart strategy, considering how much tech and entertainment are merging these days. And it's not just about bringing in new businesses either. The plan also talks about helping the businesses that are already there as the media district changes.
Because those existing businesses are a big part of what makes the media district unique. They give it that sense of history.
Right. And the plan recognizes how important it is to keep that character alive while also helping those businesses adapt to the changes.
How are they planning to do that?
Well, they're looking at things like more adaptable zoning rules, giving financial incentives to businesses that help the community, even stuff like business incubators or shared workspaces to help out startups and smaller businesses.
So it's about building an environment where businesses of all sizes can be successful. But how about the people who actually live in the media district? How will this economic plan make their lives better?
This is where it gets really interesting. Remember those different housing options we discussed? It's not just about giving residents more choices. It's about bringing a wider range of incomes and people to the area.
So creating a community that's more inclusive and represents everyone, not just one type of person.
Exactly. It's about understanding that a truly thriving district needs all kinds of people. And that ties right back into those transportation improvements and those plans for streets that are easier to walk around. By making it easier to get around without a car and creating more inviting public spaces, the media district becomes a more attractive place for everyone, regardless of how much they make or how they like to live.
It's about making sure everyone feels welcome and connected, not just those who can afford to drive everywhere or live in fancy apartments. I like that a lot.
It's definitely a well-rounded approach. And it looks like it's working. The real estate market study actually shows some really good signs, like office rents in the media district have been going up steadily for the past 10 years.
Really? Even with more people working remotely and everything that happened to offices during the pandemic?
You got it. That tells me businesses are really interested in being in the media district, even if it means paying more for office space.
That's a great sign. How about other types of businesses? Does the study show anything else about how the economy might grow?
Actually, the industrial sector is looking pretty good too. Seems like the increase in online shopping and the demand for warehouses and distribution centers is spilling over into the media district. Being centrally located and close to major highways makes it a great spot for logistics and distribution hubs.
So it's turning into a really strategic spot for all kinds of businesses, not just creative ones.
Exactly. And while hotels were hit hard during the pandemic, the study predicts they'll bounce back strong in the next few years, especially as the media district becomes a more appealing place for both business travelers and tourists.
Which makes sense. As the district gets easier to walk and bike around with more places to live and things to do, it's going to bring in more visitors.
For sure. And all this economic activity shows up in the value of the properties in the media district. The market study says the total assessed value in 2023 was a massive $6.2 billion.
That's a lot of zeros. I bet that number's only going to keep growing as the media district changes.
That's what the study says, particularly with those higher office rents and the increased demand for industrial and residential space.
This is all really encouraging, but the market study also mentions that California's property tax laws have a big effect on this value, especially when a property was bought. Can you explain that? That part went over my head a little bit.
Totally. So in California, your property taxes depend on the assessed value of your property, which is usually way less than what it would sell for on the market. And here's the thing. That assessed value usually only changes when the property is sold or something major happens to it, like a big renovation.
So a property someone bought a long time ago might have a much lower assessed value than a similar property that was bought recently, even if they're both worth about the same on the market today.
That's it. And that makes things really interesting for redevelopment. Those older properties with lower assessed values might look really appealing to developers because it's less money up front, which can make those redevelopment projects more doable financially.
That's really interesting. It's like finding hidden economic potential in the district.
Exactly. And this whole thing about assessed values and property tax laws just makes this plan to create a more diverse and balanced media district even more complex.
So we've covered a ton of information here. We've talked about the big picture, those interesting little details, and now the economic side of it. Can we bring it back down to earth for a sec? What are the main takeaways from all of this? If you could sum it all up, what are the most important things for someone like me to know about the economic future of the media district?
You're right. Let's break it down. So, key takeaways. First, the media district is about to go through a huge economic shift. It's going from being focused on studios to a real mixed-use community. And that means more opportunities for everyone.
More opportunities in terms of?
In terms of housing, jobs, things to do. We're talking about a wider range of businesses, more options for housing, and a more exciting public realm that's better for everyone, not just people working in entertainment.
A rising tide that lifts all boats.
Exactly. Second, this shift is all about making the economy more stable and resilient. They realize that depending on one industry is risky, so they're branching out.
Don't put your eggs in one basket.
Right. And lastly, this economic vision is really tied in with the other goals of the plan, like better transportation, more housing, making the media district a more attractive and environmentally friendly place to live and work.
It's all connected then. It's not just about making money. It's about building a better future for everyone who lives, works, or even just visits the media district.
Exactly. And that brings us to the next big piece of this, how. We've talked a lot about what they want to achieve, but how will they actually make it happen?
Okay, let's get into those implementation details. Okay, so we've covered the what and the why of the media district plan, the vision, the goals, the economic factors. Now, how are they actually going to turn this plan into reality?
That's the big question, right? And the plan actually does a good job of explaining the how. It lays out a really thorough implementation strategy with a clear path of actions, programs, and importantly, how they're going to pay for it all.
Yeah, that's what I like to hear. Because even the best plans can fall apart without the money to back them up. So where do they even begin with a project this big?
Well, first things first, they got to get everyone on board officially. That means getting the plan approved by the city council, making sure it follows all those environmental rules, and dealing with all the red tape that comes with a huge project like this.
Okay, so dotting the I's and crossing the T's makes sense. You can't build the future if you're cutting corners on the legal stuff, right?
Exactly. But once they check all those boxes, things can start moving. The plan outlines a whole bunch of actions and programs. This is where those big ideas become a reality.
Okay, enough with the vague descriptions. Give me the details. What are some of the key things they're actually going to do?
One of the first things is updating the zoning code to match the new vision. Remember those specific land use designations we talked about? Like allowing for taller, denser residential buildings by that new BR2 line? Well, they need to make sure the zoning rules allow for all that.
So making sure the rules actually match what they're trying to do.
Exactly. They also want to create a process for reviewing and approving new development projects that's clear and open. This makes sure that everything built in the media district actually fits with the plan and creates that mix of uses they want.
Because no one wants a bunch of random development that doesn't make sense together.
Right. And to make sure that new development is high quality, they're going to come up with detailed design guidelines that go further than just basic zoning.
Right. We're talking about those guidelines for how buildings look, what materials they use, landscaping, open spaces, all those things that give a neighborhood its character.
You got it. It's about making sure new buildings make the media district look even better and creating a streetscape that's both practical and nice to look at.
It's like setting the stage for a really beautiful and functional district instead of just a random mix of buildings. Sounds great.
And remember those cool public spaces we were talking about? The parks, plazas, and walkable streets? The plan has specific actions for making those happen too.
Now that's what I want to hear. What's a good plan without some green space and places to chill out? It's all about finding a balance.
I agree. And of course, it's all pointless if getting around is a nightmare. So improving transportation is also a big deal.
Right. We talked about that awesome new BRT line, but what else is in the works?
Definitely. Besides getting that BRT running, they're also going to focus on expanding the bike network, making it easier and safer to get around on two wheels. Plus, they'll keep looking into that local transit circulator we mentioned before, which could be a good way to get around within the district itself.
So many options besides just driving everywhere. This is about making those green transportation options the best ones.
For sure. And here's something I think is super important. The plan doesn't just focus on building new stuff. It also stresses how important it is to maintain those improvements over time. They're setting clear standards for maintenance to make sure all this investment lasts.
It's so much better to hear that than to see a brand new park get run down because nobody thought about upkeep.
Exactly. Speaking of planning, we can't forget about the most important part, how to pay for all of this.
Right, because none of this happens without some serious cash. So how are they planning to pay for it all?
They're using a few different approaches, which is always a good sign. One of the main ways will be something called development impact fees.
Okay, development impact fees. Break that down for me.
They're basically fees that are collected when new development projects happen.
Yeah.
And that money is specifically used for improvements to things like roads, sewers, and park stuff that those new developments will benefit from.
So new developments pay their fair share to help with the increased use of infrastructure. That makes sense. What else?
They'll also be looking for funding from state and federal agencies, issuing bonds to raise money, and maybe even teaming up with private companies to share the costs of some projects.
It's like putting together a giant money puzzle, finding creative ways to make it all work.
Exactly. And one of the most interesting ways they're thinking about funding is that parking benefit district we discussed earlier.
Oh, yeah. Where they take the money from parking fees and use it for better parking and transportation in the area.
That's the one. It's a great example of how they're finding new ways to pay for these improvements.
And it creates a good cycle, right? If they make parking and transportation better, more people might come to the media district and spend money there, which means more money for the district.
That's the idea. But it's not just about getting the money. It's about using it wisely and being transparent about it.
Definitely. Everyone wants to know their money is being spent well.
For sure. And the plan addresses this by saying they'll regularly check on their progress. They'll be keeping track of things like how much housing is being built, how many jobs are being created, how many people are riding transit. And even if they're meeting those goals for reducing emissions we discussed earlier, it's about holding themselves responsible.
So it's not just make a plan and hope for the best. They're going to be actively involved and making changes as needed.
Yes. And that ability to adapt is so important because things change and unexpected problems will definitely come up.
You're preaching to the choir. But it sounds like they've got a good plan and are willing to adjust as they go.
Definitely. And it's not just about the technical stuff and funding. It's also about the people working to make this happen.
Right. Because in the end, it's the people who will determine if the plan is successful or not.
Absolutely. And the plan talks about how important it is for city officials, developers, residents, and business owners to all work together.
So creating a team spirit and working towards a common objective.
You got it. They also want to keep the community involved throughout the entire process, making sure residents know what's going on, have a say, and feel like they're part of making it happen.
Because in the end, the goal is to make a media district that reflects what the whole community wants.
100%. This focus on community-driven planning is what makes it so interesting. It's not just about concrete and buildings, it's about people. And that's what makes it so cool.
It seems like the city of Burbank is onto something really special here. They're not just thinking big. They're taking concrete actions to achieve their goals, and they're doing it in a way that is well-planned, inclusive, and sustainable.
I couldn't agree more. It will be fascinating to watch how it all unfolds in the next few years.
Absolutely. As we wrap up our deep dive into the future of Burbank's Media District, I'm left with one last thought-provoking question.
I'm all ears.
The plan clearly shows a vision of the media district that's easier to walk and bike around and more focused on public transit. So, what do you think? How might this change the kinds of businesses that decide to move to the district in the future? And what kinds of opportunities might it open up for existing businesses to adapt and succeed?
Yeah, that's a great question to end on. And I think it gets to the heart of why this plan is so interesting. It's not about simply predicting the future. It's about creating a future that everyone can get excited about.
And on that note, we'll leave you with that final thought. We hope you've enjoyed this deep dive into the Burbank Media District plan and that you feel ready to get involved in this process of change. Until next time, keep exploring, keep asking those tough questions, and keep diving deep.
Thank you for watching the latest My Burbank video. If you have it in your heart, please consider helping us by clicking on the super thanks down below. Or even better, go to our channel and consider a membership. Your support is what keeps My Burbank going strong.